This is The Guide Gals, a modern, wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 11,000 hours on Pinterest, and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who's obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with standout brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I do. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about all of the reasons why we love weekday weddings.
Yeah, and there really are a lot of reasons to love weekday weddings. I feel like as weddings continue to grow and evolve over the years, I think more and more weddings will break tradition. And a lot of times, Saturdays tend to be the most popular date, but I love seeing weekday celebrations become more and more popular.
Yeah, and having a celebration on a Monday through a Friday, there's a lot of perks that come with it. This can include lower costs, more availability, a cozier group of friends, like a more intimate experience, and once again, like that non-traditional factor, like just something different and cool about your wedding. There are lots of ways where you can like play that up. So we're going to dive into all of that in this episode, all of those reasons. We're going to get into why we do love these weekday weddings. So yeah, excited to talk about it with you today.
Before we jump into those unique aspects of a weekday wedding, we're going to talk about our tried and true things, aka our beverage chat. So Chelsea, what are we drinking today?
Today I have what you might think is a Starbucks coffee, but it's not. It's just a latte that I made at home with my Nespresso. But what I've been doing, and this is not revolutionary by any means, but I've been saving my cup and rinsing it out, which maybe that's gross. Don't tell me about it. But I've been saving it and then making my coffees at home in it. And it makes me think that this is something like very special. For something about the cup, like the cup with, I don't know, like something about it makes me think that it like tastes better than it is. And I do like the taste of my at-home coffee, for the record. I don't know. I'm in a phase.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Even the little bit of the placebo effect to be like, this is coffee from a store is always fun.
What about you?
Yeah. Mine's at-home coffee, but it's still the cold brew concentrate that I've been talking about. And I just did a little bit of caramel creamer in here and with oat milk. It's pretty good. It just feels very classic. To me, like a classic flavor, vanilla, caramel, always a tried and true. So yeah, just simple but delicious. And my cup is not as fun as yours. It's just a mason jar.
Yeah, but it has a lot of character, I think. More character.
It has a
than
lid.
My cup.
I like the lid aspect of it because I will spill this on the go. So that's my only fun part of my cup.
Very nice. All right, so we are going to start talking about all the reasons why we love weekday weddings. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is probably going to seem pretty obvious, but weekday weddings are definitely easier on the wallet. So Saturday, like we mentioned at the very top of the episode, is the most popular day for weddings. And with that, it tends to be the most expensive. It's the most in demand. There are only so many Saturdays in a year or so many Saturdays in like a wedding season. I know like some venues can only accommodate you for certain times of the year. So yeah, for that reason, it's going to be the most expensive. So it drives up pretty much every associated cost from venue rentals to food and beverage, vendor packages, all of those things. So if you are going to do a Saturday wedding, I know that's not what we're talking about, but if you are going to do a Saturday wedding, you're going to have to expect that the prices are going to be a little bit higher than if you chose to do it on a different day of the week. But weekday weddings are a really great option and a way to save money, even if it's a Friday, which I love the idea of getting married on a Friday because it does still feel like the weekend, especially if you do an afternoon thing, but whatever. It's a really great way for like budget conscious couples and, you know, businesses, wedding venues and vendors alike, to kind of meet in the middle on stuff. So it really seems like a win-win for both. Vendors and venues will a lot of times have a lower cost if you choose to get married on a weekday, which is really great. But the positive for them too is that they're able to, you know, book out days that they might not normally book out. Yes, it's at a lower cost, but they're still able to make money on those days and, you know, be profitable in that way. So yeah, it it really is a win-win situation. And that's, I think, why we see more and more wedding venues offering or like really pushing their weekday wedding deals that they have, because yeah,
Yeah.
it's not really something, it's breaking tradition a little bit. It's not something that people have always done. And I think that that Saturday still does remain the most popular day to have a wedding.
Hmm.
But yes, weekday weddings are available, and yeah, a great way to save money.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of even leads into the next reason we want to talk about. And just kind of the nature of a weekday wedding is, like Chelsea said, there's more open availability for the venue. So it's easier to secure your dream venue. A lot of times, very popular venues are booked out months to years in advance. Like really popular ones are, yeah, they're hard to get squeezed in. And so sometimes if you are on a shorter engagement kind of like timeline, like it's harder to find your dream venue quickly. But maybe if you're willing to look at a weekday instead of the weekend, it might be easier to secure that spot. Or if you are still planning out years in advance and you want that beautiful venue, but all of their Saturdays are booked out until like 2027, maybe looking at a weekday is going to be more helpful for your schedule. And again, it goes back to that first point, weekdays are so much cheaper, so you're going to be saving a little bit of your budget there. And kind of the last thing to mention here is you'll normally see with venue bookings that there are peak seasons, and that can vary depending on your area or region. But you can book these weekday weddings during a peak season, but not for peak season price. So you can get a lower price because it's even while you're in peak season, because it's a weekday wedding. Again, because it's that win-win for the venue and for you. They get to book one more date and then you get to squeeze in during peak season at your favorite venue. And so again, I love all the ways that this can work out for everybody. So yeah, another kind of tip or a little trick in there that you can still get peak season availability, but maybe for a lower price if you are willing to consider weekdays.
Yeah, that's so true. And I know like a lot of people have their heart attached to like that peak season, like wedding season, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of venues, it's like, depending on location, of course, it's like, oh, well, this is when there's the perfect weather. It's not too hot. Our guests are super comfortable. They're not like dripping in sweat, trying to like watch us get married for our outdoor ceremony or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, maybe that time of year is like when all of the flowers are in bloom. And so you have this like beautiful backdrop. So it's a great thing to
Mm-hmm.
consider, especially, yeah, for those reasons. Maybe your venue's booked out for the next 2 years on Saturdays and you just can't get one. But yeah, expanding your horizons and thinking about weekday weddings is a great way to get
Mm-hmm.
like everything that you want in the timeline that you want and at the price that you might want.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then
Mm-hmm.
that kind of leads us into the next section. So, vendors are going to be like in the same boat here. So, of course, like there are only so many Saturdays or whatever that book up for wedding venues, but vendors are the same. So if you have like popular vendors that you're looking for, photographers, coordinators, florists, their Saturdays book
Mm-hmm.
up as well. So you want to, if you want to work with certain people, asking them if they're available on weekdays is going to be a great way to do that. Once again, they might have discounted
Mm-hmm.
rates as well, but you might be able to work with, more of these vendors that maybe were outside of your budget before. Maybe they offer a discounted price for a different day of the week, or maybe you just thought that they wouldn't have the availability for you, but they do since you're going to get married on a Wednesday instead. So yes. One thing to be aware of, though, is that since most wedding vendors do work on weekends, they may take Mondays or Tuesdays or like a random day of the week off. So if you do have your
Mm-hmm.
heart set on a particular vendor, make sure that you understand what their availability is. Yeah, their schedules are shifted. People that work in the wedding industry are probably, or like events in general, are probably super used to working on like Saturday nights, which is when most of the population has the day off. They're at that event that
Mm-hmm.
the person is working at. So yeah, make sure that you kind of communicate with them. Once again, this is an unconventional thing to do. There's a lot of perks with it, and a lot of people, it's a win-win situation across the board, are really into weekday weddings. We love them, but it is a little unconventional, so you want to make sure that it's working out with everybody's schedule. You can't just like assume that they're available on a Monday. Maybe they're not. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
ask questions.
Okay, another reason to love weekday weddings is, again, going back to point number one, to do with budget, but in this kind of way for hotels and airfare. In both of these realms, the costs are cheaper during the week. Hotels might not be able to fill up all of their rooms on a given weekday. And so, again, a win win for them to be able to offer that. But then the win for you is that the prices are going to be cheaper. So during the week, it is easier to find a larger room block typically. And then it's also going to be at a lower cost. Again, with airfare being very similar, weekday costs are usually cheaper. So the people who might be flying in to see you, or if you are flying to a destination to your wedding, it is cheaper on those weekdays. And honestly, I think a lot of times people are taking off a day of work anyways, and they might actually prefer to travel during the week. I feel like sometimes weekend travel is, I dread it sometimes, just because the airports are busier, it's more expensive, it's harder to get rentals. Like, there are so many
Yes.
other factors that are going to make it more complicated and more expensive. So, another reason to kind of look into these weekday dates is also for all of these associated logistics with hotels and airfare.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and it's one of those things that I don't think that I think of first, like all of those like extra expenses and logistics that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Travel and accommodations are a big one. So, yes, I don't know if you've noticed, but it usually really is a lot cheaper to buy a plane ticket for like a Tuesday morning than it is for, I don't know,
Oh
a
my
Friday
gosh.
afternoon or like
Yes.
whatever. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, having an airport less busy is
Yeah.
amazing. Or a flight that's not
Oh,
completely full is really nice. So
and
those are perks.
honestly, yeah, your guests might be so happy to see that too. They might be, I know, like weekday weddings aren't super popular right now. So some people, it might be their first exposure to a weekday wedding. But I hope your guests notice how much cheaper it is to
Mhm.
fly, to get a hotel. Like, they will probably quickly be able to realize how many benefits there are.
Yeah, agree. So, one other thing to consider, once again, this is non-traditional. People might be a little bit confused at first, especially like maybe your like older relatives or whatever. They're like, "Why are you getting married on a Thursday?" Like no one does that.
Mm,
Just make sure that there's plenty of communication going on. So let them know very far in advance that you're going to be getting married on maybe what is typically a work day for most people. You have to be aware
mm-hmm.
that if you want all of your guests to be able to attend, that you give them just plenty of notice. They'll probably have to take PTO or like adjust their work schedule. They might have to find
Mm-hmm.
someone to like watch the kids. I guess that they would have to find someone to watch the kids. Maybe the kids are coming to the wedding.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's
maybe.
forget that I said that part. But I guess if they have kids and they're invited to the wedding, they have to like probably take off of school. So lots of things to think about. Just give them
Mm,
plenty and plenty of notice because it is just like a little bit more of a logistical thing for them to figure out, for your guests to
mm-hmm.
figure out. If you're not getting married on a Saturday when they typically, most people don't have work that day, the kids don't have school. So, yeah, plenty of notice, which you should be giving your guests anyway, but just make sure. Just make sure. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the next thing that I'm going to talk about is that you can choose a fun theme for your wedding or choose a popular date. So, at the risk of things getting a little cheesy here, which I don't love, but I mean, like, if you like really wanted to do like a Taco Tuesday themed wedding, you could do that. Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
might end up being a little cheesy, but like if that's like what you want to do, then like go for it. Or what's really
Yeah.
popular is that people will get attached to certain dates. Something to keep in mind is that if it's like a really popular date that a lot of people are interested in, it might not be at that discounted rate because it might end up being one that's really high in demand.
Mm,
For example, like I know a lot of people wanted to get married on like February 2nd, 2022. Like 2 2
mm,
2020, like 2 2 2 2. That's like just a really cool date. I have to believe, I don't remember what day of the week that on. Oh, it was a Wednesday. I have that written down. It fell on a Wednesday. Obviously, that's a weekday. I think that there were no promises that that day was actually cheaper for venues because I think that a lot of people really wanted it. So they might have hiked those prices up.
yeah.
But alternatively, if there's a day that's just maybe like very important to you and your relationship, you can
Mm-hmm.
choose that too. So maybe you want to like get married on the day that you met, or maybe you want to get married on the same day that your grandparents got married. Something like that, like just something
Mm,
that feels special to you. Um,
yeah.
other people aren't going to have that same connection, so the date probably won't be in like super high demand like the 2222 date. But yeah, that's a great option and something that like would feel really special, and also like communicating that like with your guests, maybe like on your wedding website or somewhere, like we chose this day because
Mm-hmm.
I think people would really like that and see that special connection there. So yeah.
One of the last reasons to love a weekday wedding, and definitely my favorite, is that you're going to enjoy a more intimate affair. Now, naturally, because it's during the weekday, there some of your guests are going to not be able to accommodate that. And that's fine. You know what? There are a lot of people who have very strict schedules, or maybe their kids are in school or have daycare things or extracurriculars, or maybe they have a work trip, whatever it is. It will usually make the guest list a little bit smaller, just naturally by the way of all of those other logistics. And I think that's okay. I think that's a good thing. We have always talked about that we like the idea of like intimate, that feeling of just really being surrounded by your nearest and dearest. And of course, you want every single person you know and love to be able to be at your wedding, or maybe you don't, but I know I'm the type of person who loves being around people. I'm very extroverted. I love my people. And so we had invited like 250 people to our wedding. And we ended up, as you guys have heard before, having 30. And now experiencing that, if I would go back and plan it again, I would do it the same way. Maybe I'd up it to like 50, 70 people, but I would keep it really intimate. And I think that's a really beautiful part of a weekday wedding, is it kind of naturally happens that way. And it's always like no hard feelings, because you know that your guests, like they may have things that will prevent them from making it to the day. And that can be okay, because you will be able to have more FaceTime with the guests who are able to be there. It just becomes a little bit more enjoyable for you. You're not having to accommodate like hundreds of people and running around and making sure all of these details are up to par. Like you will still be doing that, of course. There's no avoiding that with any type of wedding. But with a weekday wedding, there is a different type of vibe with the intimacy, the a different type of pace, I feel like sometimes. And you're not competing also with your guests' other weekend things. That's one thing I love about it too, is that, you know, your guests are going to show up and show up for you. And then they still have the rest of the weekend potentially to do their own things and rest and relax and recover. And that also comes from a core value at Here Comes the Guide. We say work-life balance makes good business sense, but it just makes sense in real life. Like, I love the idea that your guests will be able to be there for your wedding, really enjoy it. You'll be able to really enjoy it. And then you also get the weekend to fully go on a honeymoon, or if not, then you get to enjoy that time, that downtime as well. So there are a lot of things to love about it. And yeah, I guess to touch on what Chelsea said earlier too, and just really reiterate this, is the way that you're going to guarantee that most of your guests will be able to make it for your weekday wedding is plenty of communication. Put plenty of thought behind the framework of how you're telling people, how you're keeping people up to date on things, how you're planning the time frame. Because maybe if you're having it in an area where a lot of your guests are local to, just planning it for later in the evening so people can maybe just take a few hours off of work, or can just have a buffer for like, okay, is rush hour going to be bad and they can still make it. I think the more thought and communication you put behind it, the more likely your guests will be able to make it. So that's my one caveat of, yes, it could be intimate, but also make sure you're doing these things so that more of your guests will be able to be there and celebrate your day.
Yes, and not to like make it less personal or whatever, but another perk to having a more intimate celebration is that the costs will be lower. So if you have a smaller guest list, it's going to cost you less money. So that's always a positive in my book. Maybe you do
Yeah.
invite 250 people and only 100 are able to make it. That's a huge cut, okay?
Yeah.
But like maybe that's the case. You have a bunch more money to, I don't know, put into a home project that you want to do for when you know, are starting your life together with your partner, or maybe you want to dump all of that into a few really cool excursions on your honeymoon
Yeah.
that you're going to go on. So always great when you can
Yeah.
save money.
Lots.
Yes.
Yes. Lots of things to love about weekday weddings, but yeah, the price tag is a big deal.
Yeah. It is. And it really just is a great thing to consider if you're someone going into like planning a wedding and you already know that you want to try to cut costs where you can. It's just a really great thing to
Mm-hmm.
consider. So we love weekday weddings. Those are all the reasons why we love them.
Yeah.
And I want to shout out to, if you are searching for a venue, of course, we love Here Comes the Guide. We work there. So we love it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're searching for a wedding venue that has weekday weddings, if you're on the profiles, a lot of times they will have a special section that offers deals. And a lot of times, if a venue has special deals on weekdays, they list it right there. You should
Mm-hmm.
also check a venue's website, just because if it's not there, it doesn't mean they don't offer it. But I've seen that a lot
Mm-hmm.
on the site, on Here Comes the Guide. Lots of people
Yeah.
saying that they offer special deals for that there. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
herecometheguide.com is where you can find all of that. But
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. It's always good too. Like you can reach out to all the venues on our site directly. You can use our little email form. So even if you don't see that deal on there, you can email them and say, great, I actually am really flexible on my date and I would love to consider a weekday. Can you let me know what your prices are? I would say majority of venues, like most, if not all venues, have some sort of weekday deal. But again, getting in contact with them is also a great way to find some of these places and even just to explore venues in general. Like there are so many types of venues
yes.
and styles. And so we probably list quite a few in your area. So we would recommend checking it out.
Of course, you should check it out. But
Mm-hmm.
we love weekday weddings, like we said. And yeah, I think that's all that we have to say about them, though, today. I think we said
I think
plenty.
so.
um, uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, we love them. But if you're looking for more from us, you can check out our
Mm-hmm.
website. So if you have any questions about weekday weddings or about weddings in general, wedding planning, anything, let us know. You can contact us through our website, which is theguidegalspodcast.com. On there, you can also find our full episode library and lots of free planning resources. You can also connect with us on Instagram at the Guide Gals Podcast. We post lots of behind the scenes stuff over there. We're on TikTok at the Guide Gals Pod, and we are all of our videos, or sorry, all of our episodes have a video component to them, and that is on the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel. So you can check that out as well. If you're just listening
Mm-hmm.
audio only, you should check out the YouTube. We'd love to see you over there.
We would love to see you. We'd love to hear from you. So please reach out in any of all of those places because this podcast is meant for you to help you in your wedding planning journey. But
Yes.
that is all for today.
Yeah.
So until next time,
Cheers.
cheers.